I certainly say, Madam Speaker, and I think Oregonians will agree with me.
Political bodies exist to secure responsible government and to execute the will of the...
Okay, welcome to the Oregon D.O.G.E podcast. I'm Mike McLane. I serve in the state senate. I have the pleasure of hosting this episode, and we're here with Representative Jeff Helfrich.
Thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well, Jeff, it is always a pleasure to serve with you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
We also have here with us Mac Smith. Mac works for me in the Senate. Mac is a recent graduate of Syracuse Law School and said, hey, I'm tired of cold winters. I want to get back on the West Coast. So, Mac, thanks for joining.
You want to join the rainy West Coast, right?
Yeah, the rainy West Coast.
Yeah. So, Mac's enjoying life as a staff guy in the Senate. And so today it's interesting. We've been going over the Oregon government and how we can be more efficient and some of the challenges that we have. We've looked at, money flow ins and money that flows out.
And it flows out quite a bit.
And so, the Oregon D.O.G.E, this is a discussion on government efficiency, not a department, but a discussion. But we're trying to basically ask the question whether folks who live in Oregon and are paying taxes and receiving services is whether this government's working. And we've been drilling down a little bit. We're going to have some upcoming episodes. I think one on the Department of Transportation, which, of course, everybody loves to talk about.
Yeah.
But tonight we wanted to ask the question, and it's just, how are things working on the ground when you have legislation pass? One of the questions, and we're going to get more into this later in the series of the Oregon D.O.G.E podcast, is to look at specific bills, what was promised, and then ask the question, is it working? And there are no sacred cows because in the time ahead, our government needs to get its house in order. And we've talked about that. So I wanted to preface something that this is a setup here, but the Oregon Hospital Financial Assistance Framework has evolved over 2 decades, beginning with early statutes requiring nonprofit hospitals to establish and publicize charity care policies as a condition of their tax-exempt status. However, these laws left a broad discretion to hospitals and placed a burden on patients to know about and apply for the financial aid. In 2019, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 3076. It was an update that established a statewide income eligibility standard, guaranteeing free and discounted care to patients earning up to 400% of the federal poverty level. And it required hospitals to report on their community benefit spending. Still, many eligible patients continue to fall through the cracks due to inconsistent screening and complex application process. In response, the legislature passed House Bill 3320 in 2023, requiring hospitals to pre-screen patients for financial assistance eligibility before sending a bill. This law aimed to shift responsibility from patients to the hospitals, but left hospitals free to choose and how to conduct these screenings. Most have adopted commercial tools like Experian Health and Waystar, which rely on credit history and demographic data. According to a 2024 Oregon Health Authority report, hospitals themselves estimate these tools are only about 85% accurate. To address this gap, the nonprofit $4 is now advocating for legislation that would allow hospitals with patient authorization to use verified state tax data from the Oregon Department of Revenue to determine eligibility. $4, again, this is a nonprofit, has been working with the Oregon Health Authority, the Department of Revenue, and the Hospital Association of Oregon to explore this possibility. While this approach is still under development, advocates believe it could improve accuracy, reduce administrative burden, and serve as a national model for delivering financial assistance most effectively. And we'll have to look at future legislation to determine where the policies implemented statewide. Now, we wanted to interview $4 the nonprofit, who has been working to implement the policy of state of Oregon and find out what's going on. Is the policy working? Is it not working? And today we invited Jared Walker, who serves as a policy analyst or a policy guy or the go-to guy on $4, to join our podcast and tell us how this bill is going. So Jared, welcome to the Oregon D.O.G.E podcast. Thanks for coming on. Excuse me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm the founder, executive director of $4. If you really wanted a policy nerd, I could try to get my general counsel on here. But we are, I would say, charity care experts. We are a nonprofit that has helped eliminate about $80 million of medical debt for people all over the country by enforcing hospital financial assistance policies. I grew up here in Portland, Oregon, so this is kind of where I started it, and happy to dive in and let you know how it's going.
Well, Jared, now the state passed this policy, and I think one of the things that we know is that the state of Oregon has, when it passes policies, there can be times where there's not a lot of follow-up to find out how it's working on the ground, right? So we'd love to hear from your perspective how this policy is working on the ground, because let's face it, in your district.
Oh, yeah, I want to kind of add it. You talk about the follow-up is a lot of times you hear the department heads come in, they kind of give you a word salad about, the outcomes, this is what we're seeing. And it's not diving down in the details. You're not talking to the people that are on the ground like we're going to do here. Like, hey, is this actually working? You just hear, it's a great program, and they just move on beyond it, and you never get to drill down anymore, or you always get we'll have to get back to you, Senator, or we'll have to get back to you, Representative. We weren't prepared for that question, but we'll email back the committee to let you know what these outcomes were. But they never give you the real nuts and bolts of actually, is it actually working or is it not? And this is, I think, a great opportunity to pull the curtain back so people get to see how, when we say what are the outcomes, and they can actually, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's a big deal for this.
Well, it is. And Jared, correct me if I'm wrong, but medical debt is not a partisan issue, and it's not an urban and rural issue, correct?
Yeah, I mean, medical debt is still the number one cause of bankruptcy in America. It is kind of the number one thing that will push someone into a cycle of poverty. I don't think, we've got a bill that was modeled after the Oregon law that was just introduced in Texas by a very, conservative group. I think that this is a very bipartisan issue, and I think everybody can kind of get on board with the idea that, you shouldn't have to declare bankruptcy because you get sick.
Right. Well, so $4, tell us a little bit about $4 and then dive into it. I'd love to hear how this policy that Oregon started is working on the ground.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you just a little $4 history real quick. Because we are now a national organization. But we started as $4 Portland. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I started this as a crowdfunding platform to help people pay medical bills. I watched my own family go through a medical emergency and realized when you have a medical emergency, a lot of times you have a financial emergency. So I wanted to help people in that situation. And I started helping raise funds for local families to pay medical bills. So I did that for years, from 2015 to 2019. And then I discovered what hospital financial assistance was, what hospital charity care was. And I was pretty shocked because I had never heard of it. And none of the patients that I, was helping had ever heard of it. So immediately it kind of just set off this like, okay, what's going on here? Why doesn't anybody know about these programs? And really the answer is because hospitals don't do a great job of telling people. That's why. So I started helping people apply for charity care, dive into these policies. And just like for people that are listening, hospital charity care went into, nationally with the Affordable Care Act, where hospitals are nonprofit hospitals, which is most in America, are required to have community benefit. This is in exchange for their tax exempt status. And a big portion of that is charity care, which is, reduced care, discounted or even a complete waiver of the bill if you meet certain income guidelines. So we started helping patients get access to this. And it worked. In a few months, we got over $1 million in medical debt to be cleared, and we were able to help a lot more patients than crowdfunding. So did that, and in 2021, we kind of had a big moment. Social media was actually TikTok that originally kind of made it all go viral and kind of blow up. But we've been now advocating for better laws for charity care to screen people, because what happens is patients leave the hospital without ever knowing that these programs exist, and we want to help get patients that knowledge up front, so when they leave the hospital they know. So yes, 3320 HB 3320 requires that. It requires hospital to screen patients before billing them, which is a great step. And does it work? What are we hearing? So last Friday we listened to the OHSU board meeting, and the CFO was talking about how before the bill, how they would determine financial assistance is they would tell patients about it if they were asked about it. So hey, I want to apply for financial assistance, and OHSU would help them through that, but they weren't doing it proactively. So they said that would result in about 12% of patients receiving financial assistance. And since that law has passed, we've got about 9 months worth of data. And they said that about 64% of patients are now receiving some sort of financial assistance. So that is one hospital.
And it's an important hospital. I also want to welcome Joel David Moore to the podcast. And
hello, everybody.
Thank you for joining. And just a quick bio on you. You're an Oregon actor, director, producer from Portland as well. Best known for your role as Norm Spellman in the Avatar franchise, and the new film, or I should say, it's not new anymore, but Avatar: The Way of Water, which I've seen. Great movie.
You're dating yourself.
Yeah, and Joel David Moore has also stepped into producing, including work on the upcoming action comedy Brideheart, starring Rebel Wilson. He gained early recognition in comedies like Dodgeball, a true underdog story, which, by the way, I love that film, and Grandma's Boy, and directed several feature films, including Youth in Oregon. So welcome to the podcast, Joel. And
Thank you. Long roots in Oregon. Long roots in Oregon. I was born and raised there, spent half of my life in Portland, went to Southern Oregon University, where the lovely Oregon Shakespeare Festival, did 2 years at the Shakespeare Festival, randomly have my Portland Trailblazers hat on. Bona fide Oregonian. Good people.
Good. Well, and Joe, tell us, I know you're active with $4, but how are you involved?
Well, Jared had this wacky, wild plan to potentially save the world or save the country from all of this ridiculous medical debt that I'm sure he's been talking about in the first 15 minutes of this podcast. And I said, "You're crazy. This is a wild plan, but I think it's brilliant and it's going to work." And I watched this one man out of his apartment somewhere on the southeast side, I believe, work up an agenda that was so robust with like heart. It was really just heart at the beginning of this entire thing. There was not a formal organization. There wasn't really a business measure. And as we started talking about sort of the business side of it, and he really started to engage the local community and figure out that the way forward is not just raising money and putting it into one family's hands at a time. It really is to fight the system, legally fight the system, and take his agenda countrywide. Is when it went from, forgiving tens of thousands of dollars to debt to tens of millions of dollars of debt. And the number right now is staggering. I don't want to misquote it, but I think it's upwards of almost $70 million that $4 has done. And I can tell you, Jared, I can't see you. I've known him since he was born. We went to the same church in Milwaukee Covenant Church over in Milwaukee together. And our two families grew up together. And I can tell you, Jared, I don't think that you planned on saying that number, you know, on this pod, like this entire thing has blown up to such a degree that, and I'm so proud of every minute every minute that I've spent, that we on the board have spent, but every minute that Jared has sacrificed in his personal life to be able to get to platform this incredible nonprofit.
Well, Jared, what a great accolade, because the thing that I am curious about, but I don't know the stat, but charity care as a law has come up in all sorts of presidential campaigns and the like, because we've made a policy decision in this country, and certainly in the state of Oregon, that if someone comes to the hospital, they're going to receive care, and obviously emergency care and the like. So, is there similar laws to what Oregon has and enacted in House Bill 3076 in other states, and if so, how many? Do you know?
Yeah, so charity care, meaning that if you meet certain income requirements, hospitals are legally required to discount that bill or even sometimes waive that bill. That was made a national law with the Affordable Care Act. So every single state, every hospital in the country that is nonprofit, which is about 65%, they're required to have some type of charity care or financial assistance policy. And then even the for-profits, I mean, HCA, probably the largest for-profit health system in the country, they have financial assistance policies as well. So that is nationwide. With Bill 3320 that requires hospitals to pre-screen patients, that is going to be, I would say Oregon has the best state law that has really strengthened that federal law, because the federal law is pretty vague. It says, hey, you got to have a policy, and that's pretty much it.
Roger that. So we have this law that was enacted. You realize that it wasn't being implemented the way that policymakers wanted. So give us a little bit of the history. So that led you to take the initiative, and what did you observe that frankly was causing this law to stagnate?
Yeah, so what we see, and this was true in Oregon a couple years ago, but it's also true for the rest of the country at most hospitals. The language of the law says that your financial assistance policy needs to be widely publicized and widely available. So what hospitals have done with that language is that they have put a poster up in their ER, and they've said, okay, it's widely publicized. We don't need to do anything else, right? Unfortunately, people don't read posters in the ER when they're going to the emergency room. So
hemorrhaging.
Yeah, exactly. So what we see is that hospitals have their poster up in the ER. They usually have a application hidden somewhere on their website, and if you request that application, they will normally mail it to you in 7 to 10 business days and ask you to fax or mail it back to them. So that is kind of how the system works. That was, a problem, because I don't know about you all, but I don't have a fax machine, nor do a lot of the patients that we're serving. So
Fair
it was
enough.
just really, not an accessible program, but again, it existed. And if you knew how to jump through the hoops and you knew the right language and you knew, that you could figure it out. And that's basically what I set out to do. I said, okay, can I figure this out? Can I make this easier? So that is what we see. And I've got horror stories from all over the place of, hospitals asking wild questions on their applications. What kind of car do you drive? How much livestock do you own? It's they make it difficult on purpose, I think. And that was kind of what we set out to do, is to make charity care known, easy, and fair.
Great. Well, one of the things that when it comes to making our government more efficient and making it more useful for people, it sounds like this software system that you're describing does that. So take a moment and describe what it is that is working.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've created a database of every hospital in the country, about 8,000 hospitals, and we have captured all of their financial assistance and charity care policy data and eligibility criteria. So a patient can go to our website, they can put in their household size, their income, what hospital, and it will tell them if they're eligible for financial assistance at their hospital. So right off the bat, we can tell people if they're eligible, and then if they are, we have created digital applications. So no more fax, no more mailing the applications. We have kind of an all-in-one tool where patients can fill it out on their phone, tablet, computer, and it automatically takes all their data, plugs it into the right hospital application, and ships it off to the hospital. And then we have patient advocates that advocate on their behalf until hopefully the bills are reduced or waived entirely. So just trying to make it, I mean, hospitals could very easily do this, right? Like a digital application is not anything crazy. We haven't created any new technology, right? We're just making a bad process a little more automated and easy. So that is what the $4 system looks like. What we've really wanted to do in Oregon is try and figure out a way to automate the hardest part of this whole process is proof of income. So if a hospital, if you got to show the hospital that you are eligible for their program, you have to, share your income documentation. So maybe 3 months of pay stubs, tax return, and a lot of that, I think, through some of these tools like, the Department of Revenue, that data exists and we can potentially automate that. So that's another piece to this that we're trying, but not there yet.
I just want to go back. And so you guys do a lot of sort of pro bono free work to help people that are having these issues get out of this debt. Is that right? So that just for anybody watching, if you are an Oregonian, if you're having issues with medical debt, I think $4 is potentially a very good resource for you guys. But yeah, so moving beyond that, obviously we have state legislatures here. Do you guys have any maybe specific legislative policy ideas, or like something that could become a bill that you want to advocate for?
I want to jump in real quick because you kind of mentioned something. I like dialing into the mechanics of it. So is there anything on the books in the other state that mandates, besides the poster being put up when the patient comes in, or the financial services there when they're doing an intake and they're looking at the money, that says, hey, here's who you have to, or here's somebody that can help be a resource to you? And if so, you've automated it to the point where they give them a piece of paper, but then our smartphones and our lives are so generated by these little devices that are little supercomputers in our hands. It's got a QR code that automatically goes to it, and they can sit there and just dial in their info. And then as you're getting ready to probably say, hey, get access into these other agencies to help to say if they're qualified or not. Is that something on the horizon for the technology you've talked about, or at least looking at?
Yeah. So basically having hospitals implement something similar to what we've created. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Here's the sheet. Like, here's a sheet that says, these are the options that you can have if you find out you're unable to pay, or at least if you're looking for financial assistance.
Yeah. I think that's kind of, that's kind of what the Oregon law would, has done.
Okay.
Is they've kind of up front, they said, okay, we're going to screen you for these programs, which is great, which is why we see that big bump at least at OHSU of patients receiving it. So I definitely think, and there's, a couple other states, North Carolina has a really interesting state law that is being implemented right now. And then there's a couple other states working on, charity care laws that are similar to Oregon. But I would say, like, Oregon right now is a pretty great model for the rest of the country. I mean, as we continue to collect more data from these hospitals to see how much more charity care they're giving out, as opposed to before the bill, I think that Oregon might be ahead of the game on this.
It's interesting.
And
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One more point I did want to say. Yes, $4 is a free resource. We do not charge for this. We are a nonprofit funded fully through philanthropy. So if you do have a hospital bill, you can definitely go to $4.org and see if you're eligible for any type of financial assistance. We are more than happy to help.
So
I do want to mention something, because I think it's easier for me to say this, because Jared runs the nonprofit. Hospitals don't want you to see this, right? That's the thing that I will say. They don't want you. It's not in their best interest for you to see that they will give you charity care, that they will, that
Right.
if you're under a threshold and you are struggling. I mean, this is incredible. Like these are big machines, these hospitals. People get rich inside of these machines, these hospitals. And there's no access to this. It's astonishing. It's embarrassing. This should be a state.
Oh, we lost you there, Joel.
Oh. So the
We lost him.
well,
Go
we
for it.
just lost audio for a second, but Joe, I want to follow up. You mentioned it's in their self-interest not to, and I guess that was a question I had is, why did I suppose the question's obvious, but why, in your experience, why do hospitals drag their feet?
There's a handful of different answers there. Hospitals are complicated. They're enormous organizations, right? And when you look at revenue cycle at a hospital, charity care, and helping patients relieve medical debt at a discount or waiving it entirely just is not the highest priority for them, which is fair, right? Like they're trying to collect money as well. So one, I would say it's not a high priority. Two, I would say that most hospitals just do what everyone else is doing. So like what if a patient doesn't pay, they send them to collections, and if it goes long enough, then they'll sell that debt and they might get sued and taken over to court over a small medical bill, which happens a lot. And one thing that comes up in our conversations with hospitals is just the amount of the administrative burden of sending people to collections, and like hospitals spend a tremendous amount of time and money trying to collect from people that can't pay. And it would be just as easy, if not easier and cheaper, for the hospitals to identify people up front for who is eligible for these programs and apply the discount necessary rather than trying to chase after the bill. So I think there is a little bit of a perception issue where I've had hospitals tell me, this is more of a perception issue. We don't want to be known as the most generous hospital because we don't want all of these low-income patients flooding, our doors, which I don't think is a illegitimate fear, but it's something that I've heard hospitals say. So I think that there's a handful of reasons. I think that the worst version of it is these hospitals are greedy and they want to make money and they want to bill patients and ruin their lives. I don't think that that's true for every hospital.
Can't be that can't be the case.
Exactly.
But they drag their
it's
feet.
A very, very complex issue.
Well, and dragging their feet, as you mentioned, Jeff, is the what we find happening in not just isolated to hospitals. Because when we implement and when we look at how Oregon is going to sort of correct its mission creep and get its house in order on the budget and some of our programs, we do find on the ground that people drag their feet. And sometimes there's not follow-up, at least with medical debt, which again is affecting folks in urban and rural areas, and it's bipartisan problem, and folks should have access to this assistance because the law is the law.
Right. You mentioned something, and I kind of asked, what other states are out there doing this, and I think you have two lawmakers that sit here and we're both fiscally conservative, and we want to make sure our dollars are spent wisely because we're asking these people are giving us their tax dollars to spend wisely. And I always think about that when I push the button, yes or no on those. And when you can show cases where, hey, this has worked in this state or it's worked in that state, and then and that helps your idea move forward and get that support it needs. Whereas when I hear somebody say, well, I have this great idea and we should have a study on this and spend $10 million on this study. And then what does it end? Well, nothing really. But for me, when you have that thing that works and I'm not funding this, well, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. So when you're able to show that to other agencies, other states, or the lawmakers that are somewhat skeptical, because we always hear these dollars going out to some of these nonprofits and there's never any return on the investment. And so if you're showing that return on investment, and whether it's Oregon's the model for it or some other state or a combination thereof, I think you got on the right track.
Yeah, no, I would say that hospital charity care. So one, I want to say that, medical debt in general is something that impacts most people. We've probably all given to a GoFundMe for a family member or friend or something that, that has suffered some type of loss or emergency. And we shouldn't have a system that requires people to run to GoFundMe and raise money from their friends and family, right? Like that's not efficient. So charity care to me is just the lowest hanging fruit for us to be able to help people right now. Like we have a lot of people that, what is that stat? 54% of Americans could not afford a $500 medical emergency. And that's the reality for a lot of people and a lot of Oregonians, right? So I think that we have this idea where people look at the healthcare system and there is a tremendous amount of distrust. People do not trust the healthcare system right now, for good reason, right? And we have an opportunity to show people that you don't have to lose everything because you get sick, because there are programs available like charity care that can save you that burden. And for over a decade, we've had hospitals kind of hide that information rather than share it with patients that need it. So I think that charity care is definitely the lowest hanging fruit to help people right now. And it's obviously on the top of a lot of people's mind, healthcare and medical debt. So as far as other policies, like I think that what we're doing in Oregon is very efficient. I think that $4 has been able to turn every dollar donated into $25 of medical debt relief. That's pretty darn good. And I think that, when you look at OHSU, the estimate for them implementing this one law for 9 months, they said that the impact would be about $30 to $50 million back into the pockets of Oregonians. So I think that, so far it's looking good. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know. I'm just rambling here, but
no, that's great.
That's what I would say.
Mac, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does sound good.
Yeah, one thing that we're trying to do is emphasize to folks who are the taxpayers and the citizens that receive the services is they deserve a government that runs lean and efficient. And we wanted to ask this question because this is something that affects all of us, and medical care and the delivery of the medical system is highly important to all of us. And so the question becomes, in times where the budgets are lean, or like with Oregon's challenge that we're going to have to get by on smaller amounts of federal government in the coming decade, is what can we do to be more efficient? And it sounds like this is an example where you have perhaps some feet dragging, and then you got to communicate, get people out to know how to access it. But then I love the idea of bringing in a system that allows people to quickly apply, and then we know who's in and who's out. But to relieve folks of, as Joel said, 70 million of medical debt is
it's a huge number.
It's a huge number, and it's fantastic. And I just want to make sure our viewers, and we'll certainly put it in the show notes by our producer, Jacob, will make sure it happens. But your website, so dollar4.org. So it's DOLLARFOR
Yep. Correct.
$4.org. And so frankly, if you're listening and you have some ongoing care and some medical debt, or if you know of someone who may need some financial assistance, Oregon has a law. And if we're going to have a law, let's make the law work. Let's be efficient about it. And I'd encourage you to go to $4.org and learn more about it. And I hope there are more instances of where this model can be applied into other areas of our government, because we're going to be talking about areas where people drag their feet. A lot of them are, bureaucrats or business or, whatever the issue is, that ultimately, as Joel said, sometimes people act in their self-interest and drag their feet on the law. And but we want to be able to highlight some of those, not because we're trying to beat up on people, but we're trying to make this government work. And so with that,
it's about accountability.
It's about accountability, really. And frankly, the rule of law and making sure people who need services have access to them, but we're doing it right. And so, Jared Walker, fantastic job. I serve in the state Senate. Representative Helfrich serves in the House of Representatives. And of course, the best darn staff in the entire building, Max Smith over there, Syracuse Law School grad, working his first job and loving it, right, Mac?
That's great. I love politics. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but you can get a hold of us, but I'd encourage all folks to, even if you don't know about it, even if you come to this podcast to basically say, hey, where is Oregon efficient, where we're not? And go check out $4.org and learn more about it. And if there's anything we can do to help you, let us know, Jared.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah,
And
you have my email. Feel free to shoot me an email, and I'll get it around if yeah.
We do apologize to Joel. We had some technical difficulties, and I'm sure it was some partisan political hacks sabotaging the system.
Exactly what it was, right?
And but as Joel, what does Joel do since he can't hear? I know you guys grew up together and are friends, and your families are friends. How's he helping you out?
Yeah, so Joel is one of the original founding board members. So Joel is one of the first board members we had on at $4, and we've stayed in touch. So always down to help, and we've been on what is the local AM Northwest in Portland a whole bunch of different times together, and so yeah, he's been a supporter for a long time.
Well, and Joel's doing great in his career, and of course we've seen a bunch of his movies and wish him the best. But I think apparently some good comes out of Hollywood
Every once in a while, right?
every once in a while. So, well, with that, I appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing more. And for folks coming up, we're going to be covering the Department of Transportation.
Oh, that's going to be a mess.
And then we're going to look at some other bills and other laws that you may have heard of. Like a lot of folks have heard of charity law or charity care, and we're going to drill down into some of that and ask the question, how's it working on the ground? And try to get you some answers. But with that, we'll see you next time.